mongoose in there, do you?
Well, how did you know? See, today is my birthday, but you had no idea.
Happy birthday,
Thank
Peter.
you. 73.
Wow.
When Dan asked me, he said he would make me the feature, and of course I was very happy about that. And when he picked the day, and I thought, oh my God, it's my
No, you picked the day, dude.
Yeah. Well, it just turned out that it's my birthday. So isn't this perfect for your 73rd birthday to be in the arena?
Awesome.
So, well, I got from my partner David, this is what he got me today for my birthday. Really? A mongoose.
Love it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
There we go.
That's one for you, Rocky.
Rikki-Tikki-Tavi.
The only thing it isn't is mechanical.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
And I got this card. Have a fucking fabulous birthday today.
Excellent.
From one of my best friends.
Happy birthday to Peter.
All right.
And without further ado, Rikki-Tikki-Tavi.
Yes. But quickly, thank you very much for this opportunity. Really. And Cliff and Rocky, I've been coming here for about a year and a half, and they gave me the chance to learn. I'll just leave it at that. I learned this story to honor my friend Lord Spencer Smart from Robertsbridge, England. Okay. Rikki-Tikki-Tavi was written in 1894. And it was quite fascinating. And you in the back, that hat, man, you are a cool dude. If I could wear a hat, I can. I'd look like Beetle Bailey. I know this comes off. I think it does. It does. Okay. All right. And if you can't hear, this is the story of the Great War that Rikki-Tikki-Tavi fought single-handed through the bathrooms of the big bungalow in Segoli Cantonment. Durzy, the tailor bird, helped him, and Chuchundra, the muskrat, who never comes out into the middle of the floor, but always creeps round by the wall, gave him advice. But Rikki-Tikki did the real fighting. He was a mongoose, rather like a little cat in his fur and his tail, but quite like a weasel in his head, in his habits. His eyes and the end of his restless nose were pink. He could scratch himself anywhere he pleased, with any leg, front or back, that he chose to use. He could fluff up his tail till it looked like a bottle brush. And his war cry, as he scuttled through the tall grass, was, "Rick-tick-ticky-ticky-chick." One day, a high summer flood washed him out of the burrow where he lived with his father and mother, and carried him kicking and clucking down a roadside ditch. He found a little wisp of grass floating there, and clung to it till he lost his senses. When he revived, he was lying in the hot grass in the middle of a. When he revived, he was lying in the hot sun in the middle of a garden path, very draggled indeed. And a small boy was saying, "Here's a dead mongoose. Let's have a funeral." "No," said his mother. "Let's take him in and dry him. Perhaps he isn't really dead." They took him into the house, and a big man picked him up between his finger and thumb and said he was not dead, but half choked. So they wrapped him in cotton wool and warmed him over a little fire, and he opened his eyes and sneezed. "Now," said the big man. He was an Englishman who had just moved into the bungalow. "Don't frighten him, and we'll see what he'll do." It is the hardest thing in the world to frighten the mongoose, because it is eaten up from nose to tail with curiosity. The motto of all the mongoose family is, "Run and find out." And Rikki-Tikki was a true mongoose. He looked at the cotton wool, decided that it was not good to eat, ran around the table, sat up and put his fur in order, scratched himself, and jumped on the small boy's shoulder. "Don't be frightened, Teddy," said his father. "That's his way of making friends." "Ouch, he's tickling under my chin," said Teddy. Rikki-Tikki looked down between the boy's collar and neck, snuffed at his ear, ran around the table, sat up and put his fur in order. Is that right?
Good gracious, said Teddy's mother.
"Good gracious," said Teddy's mother. "And that's a wild creature. I suppose he's so tame because we've been kind to him." "All mongooses are like that," said her husband. "If Teddy doesn't pick him up by the tail or try to put him in a cage, he'll run in and out of the house all day long. Let's give him something to eat." They gave him a little piece of raw meat. Rikki-Tikki liked it immensely, and when it was finished, he went out into the veranda and sat in the sunshine and fluffed up his fur to make it dry to the roots. Then he felt better. There are more things to find out about in this house, he said to himself, than all my family could find out in all their lives. I shall certainly stay and find out. He spent all that day roaming over the house. He nearly drowned himself in the bathtubs, put his nose into the ink on a writing table, and burnt it on the end of the big man's cigar, for he climbed into the big man's lap to see how writing was done. At nightfall, he ran into Teddy's nursery to watch how kerosene lamps were lighted, and when Teddy went to bed, Rikki-Tikki climbed up too. But he was a restless companion, because he had to get up and attend to every noise all through the night and find out what made it. Teddy's mother and father came in, the last thing to look at their boy, and Rikki-Tikki was awake on the pillow. "I don't like that," said Teddy's mother. "He may bite the child." "He'll do no such thing," said the father. "Teddy's safer with that little beast than if he had a bloodhound to watch him. If a snake came into the nursery now." But Teddy's mother wouldn't hear of anything so awful. Early in the morning, Rikki-Tikki came to early breakfast in the veranda, riding on Teddy's shoulder, and they gave him banana and some boiled egg, and he sat on all their laps, one after another, because every well-brought-up mongoose always hopes to be a house mongoose someday, with rooms to run about in. And Ricky's mother, she used to live in the general's house at Segoli, had carefully told Rikki what to do if he ever came across white men. Then Rikki-Tikki went out into the garden to see what was to be seen. It was a large garden, only half cultivated, with bushes as big as summer houses, of Marshall Neal roses, lime and orange trees, clumps of bamboos, and thickets of tall grass.
Rikki-Tikki licked his lips.
Rikki-Tikki licked his lips. "This is a splendid hunting ground," he said, and his tail grew bottle-brushy at the thought of it, and he scuttled up and down the garden, snuffing here and there, till he heard very sorrowful voices in a thorn bush. It was Durzy, the tailor bird, and his wife. They had made a beautiful nest by pulling two big leaves together and stitching them up the edges with fibers, and had filled the hollow with cotton and downy fluff. The nest swayed to and fro as they sat on the rim and cried. "What is the matter?" asked Rikki-Tikki. "We are very miserable," said Durzy. "One of our babies fell out of the nest yesterday, and Nog ate him." "Well," said Rikki-Tikki, "that is very sad, but I am a stranger here. Who is Nog?" Durzy and his wife only cowered down in the nest without answering, for out of the thick grass at the foot of the bush there came a low hiss, a horrid cold sound that made Rikki-Tikki jump back 2 clear feet. Then, inch by inch, out of the grass rose up the head and spread hood of Nog, the big black cobra, and he was 5 feet long from tongue to tail. When he had lifted 1/3 of himself clear off the ground, he stayed balancing to and fro, exactly as a dandelion tuft balances in the wind. And he looked at Rikki-Tikki with wicked snake's eyes that never changed their expression, whatever the snake may be thinking of. "Who is Nog?" said he. "I am Nog. The great god Brahm put his mark upon all our people when the first cobra spread his hood to keep the sun off Brahm as he slept. Look and be afraid." He spread out his hood more than ever, and Rikki-Tikki saw the spectacle mark on the back of it that looks exactly like the eye part of a hook and eye fastening. For the minute he was afraid, but it is impossible for a mongoose to stay frightened for any length of time. And though Rikki-Tikki had never met a live cobra before, his mother had fed him on dead ones, and he knew that all a grown mongoose's business in life was to fight and eat snakes. Nog knew that too, and at the bottom of his cold heart, he was afraid. Well, said Rikki-Tikki, and his tail began to fluff up. Marks or no marks, do you think it is right for you to eat fledglings out of a nest? Nog was thinking to himself and watching the least little movement in the grass behind Rikki-Tikki. He knew that mongooses in the garden meant death, sooner or later, for him and his family. But he wanted to get Rikki-Tikki off his guard, so he dropped his head a little and put it on one side. Let us talk, he said. You eat eggs. Why should not I eat birds? Behind you, look behind you, sang Durzy. Rikki-Tikki knew better than to waste his time in staring. He jumped up in the air, as high as he could go, and just under him whizzed by the head of Naganya, Nog's wicked wife. She had crept up behind him as he was talking to make an end of him. He heard her savage hiss as the stroke missed. He jumped up.
Came down, almost across.
One
her
or the
back.
other. He came down almost across her back. And if he had been an old mongoose, he would have known that then was the time to break her back with one bite. But he was afraid of the terrible lashing return stroke of the cobra. He bit indeed, but did not bite long enough, and he jumped clear of the whisking tail, leaving Naganya torn and angry. Wicked, wicked Durzy, said Nog, lashing up as high as he could reach toward the nest in the thorn bush. But Durzy had built it out of reach of snakes, and it only swayed to and fro. Rikki-Tikki felt his eyes growing red and hot. When a mongoose's eyes grow red, he is angry, and he sat back on his tail and hind legs like a little kangaroo, looked all round him and chattered with rage. But Nog and Naganya had disappeared in the grass. When a snake misses its stroke, it never says anything or gives any sign of what it means to do next. Rikki-Tikki did not care to follow them, for he did not feel sure that he could manage 2 snakes at once. So he trotted off to the gravel path near the house and sat down to think. It was a serious matter for him. If you read the old books of natural history, you will find, they say, that when the mongoose fights the snake and happens to get bitten, he runs off and eats some herb that cures him. That is not true. The victory is only a matter of quickness of eye and quickness of foot. A snake's blow against a mongoose's jump, and as no eye can follow the motion of a snake's head when it strikes. This makes things much more wonderful than any magic herb. Rikki-Tikki knew he was a young mongoose, and it made him all the more pleased to think that he had managed to escape a blow from behind. It gave him confidence in himself, and when Teddy came running down the path, Rikki-Tikki was ready to be petted. But just as Teddy was stooping, something wriggled a little in the dust, and a tiny voice said, "Be careful, I am death." It was Krite, the dusty brown snakeling that lives for choice on the dusty earth, and his bite is as dangerous as the cobra's, but he is so small that nobody thinks of him, and so he does the more harm to people. Rikki-Tikki's eyes grew red again, and he danced up to Krite with the peculiar rocking, swaying motion that he has inherited from his family. It looks very funny, but it is so perfectly balanced a gait that you can fly off from it from any angle you please. And in dealing with snakes, this is an advantage. If Rikki-Tikki had only known, he was doing a much more dangerous thing than fighting Nog. For Krite is so small and can turn so quickly that unless Rikki bit him close to the back of the head, the return stroke would get him in his eye or his lips. But Rikki did not know. His eyes were all red, and he rocked back and forth looking for a good place to hold. Krite struck out. Rikki jumped sideways and tried to run in, but the wicked little dusty gray head lashed within a fraction of his shoulder, and he had to jump over the body, and the head followed his heels close. Teddy shouted to the house, "Oh, look here, our mongoose is killing a snake." And Rikki-Tikki heard a scream from Teddy's mother. His father came out with a stick, but by the time he came up, Crite had lunged out once too far, and Rikki-Tikki had sprung, jumped on the snake's back, dropped his head far between his forelegs, bitten as high up the back as he could get hold, and rolled away. That bite paralyzed Crite, and just as Rikki-Tikki was getting ready to eat him up from the tail, after the custom of his family at dinner, he remembered that a full meal makes a slow mongoose, and if he wanted all his strength and quickness ready, he must keep himself thin. He went away for a dust bath under the castor oil bushes, while Teddy's father beat the dead Crite. What is the use of that, he thought. I have settled it all. And then Teddy's mother picked him up from the dust and hugged him, crying that he had saved Teddy from death. And Teddy's father said that he was a providence. And Teddy looked on with big, scared eyes. Rikki-Tikki was rather amused by all the fuss, which of course he did not understand. Teddy's mother might just as well have petted Teddy for playing in the dust. Ricky was thoroughly enjoying himself. That night at dinner, walking to and fro among the wine glasses on the table, he might have stuffed himself 3 times over with nice things. But he remembered Nog and Naganya, and though it was very pleasant to be patted and petted by Teddy's mother and to sit on Teddy's shoulder, his eyes would get red from time to time, and he would go off into his long war cry of Rik-Tik-Tikki-Tikki-Chick. Teddy carried him off to bed and insisted on Rikki-Tikki sleeping under his chin. Rikki-Tikki was too well bred to bite or scratch, but as soon as Teddy was asleep, he went off for his nightly walk through the house, and in the dark came up against Chuchundra, the muskrat, creeping around by the wall. Chuchundra is a broken-hearted little beast. He whimpers and cheeps all the night, trying to make up his mind to run into the middle of the room, but he never gets there. "Don't kill me," said Chuchundra, almost weeping. "Rikki-Tikki, don't kill me." "Do you think a snake killer kills muskrats?" said Rikki-Tikki scornfully. "Those who kill snakes get killed by snakes," said Chuchundra, more sorrowfully than ever. "And how can I be sure that Nog won't mistake me for you some dark night?" "There's not the least danger," said Rikki-Tikki. "But Nog is in the garden, and I know you don't go there." "My cousin Chua the rat told me," said Chuchundra, and he stopped. "Told you what?" "Shh! Nog is everywhere, Rikki-Tikki. You should have talked to Chua in the garden." "I didn't, so you must tell me. Quick, Chuchundra, or I'll bite you." Chuchundra sat down and cried till the tears rolled off his whiskers. "I'm a very poor man," he sobbed. "I never had spirit enough to run into the middle of the room." "Shh! I mustn't tell you anything. Can't you hear, Rikki-Tikki?" Rikki-Tikki listened. The house was as still, but he thought he could just catch the faintest scratch in the world, a noise as faint as that of a wasp walking on a window pane, the dry scratch of a snake's scales on brickwork. "That's Nog and Naganya," he said to himself. "You're right, Chuchundra. I should have talked to Chua." He stole off to Teddy's bathroom, but there was nothing there, and then to Teddy's mother's bathroom. At the bottom of the smooth plaster wall, there was a brick pulled out to make a sluice for the bathwater, and as Ricky stole in by the masonry curb where the bath is put, he heard Nog and Naganya whispering together outside in the moonlight. "When the house is emptied of people," said Naganya to her husband, "he will have to go away, and then the garden will be our own again. Go in quietly, and remember that the big man who killed Crite is the first one to bite. Then come out and tell me, and we will hunt for Rikki-Tikki together." "But are you sure that there is anything to be gained by killing the people?" said Nog. "Everything. When there were no people in the bungalow, did we have any mongoose in the garden? So long as the bungalow is empty, we are king and queen of the garden. And remember that as soon as our eggs in the melon bed hatch, as they may tomorrow, our children will need room and quiet. I had not thought of that, said Nog. I will go, but there is no need that we should hunt for Rikki-Tikki afterward. I will kill the big man and his wife and the child if I can, and come away quietly. Then the bungalow will be empty, and Rikki-Tikki will go. Rikki-Tikki tingled all over with rage and anger at this, and then Nog's head came through the sluice, and his 5 feet of cold body followed it. Angry as he was, Rikki-Tikki was very frightened as he saw the size of the big cobra. Nog coiled himself up, raised his head, and looked into the bathroom in the dark, and Rikki-Tikki could see his eyes glitter. Now, if I kill him here, Naganya will know, and if I fight him on the open floor, the odds are in his favor. What am I to do? Said Rikki-Tikki-Tavi. Nog waved to and fro, and Rikki-Tikki heard him drinking from the biggest water jar that was used to fill the bath. That is good, said the snake. Now, when Crike was killed, the big man had a stick. He may have that stick still, but when he comes in to bathe in the morning, he will not have a stick. I shall wait here till he comes. Naganya, do you hear me? I shall wait here in the cool till daytime. There was no answer from outside, so Rikki-Tikki knew Naganya had gone away. Nog coiled himself down, coil by coil, round the bulge at the bottom of the water jar, and Rikki-Tikki stayed still as death. After an hour, he began to move, muscle by muscle, toward the jar. Nog was asleep, and Rikki-Tikki looked at his big back, wondering which would be the best place for a good hold. If I don't break his back at the first jump, he can still fight. And if he fights, oh, Rikki. He looked at the thickness of the neck below the hood, but that would be too much for him. And a bite near the tail would only make Nog savage. Do you want me to stop here? It's from G. Go.
It's only, I don't know how much is left.
I don't either.
Yeah, he's a good person.
If I.
So should we take a?
Do you want to take a break?
Should we take a
See, I
break
know-
or should we keep going?
I had to break it up into pieces. So this is G. Keep going? A little bit more? Okay, you just tell me what. It must be the head, he said at last. The head above the hood. And when I am once there, I must not let go. Then he jumped. The head was lying a little clear of the water jar, just under the curve of it. And as his teeth met, Rikki braced his back against the bulge of the red earthenware to hold down the head. This gave him just 1 second's purchase, and he made the most of it. Then he jumped. No, I already said that. Then he was battered to and fro, as a rat is shaken by a dog, to and fro on the floor, up and down and around in great circles. But his eyes were red, and he held on as the body car-whipped over the floor, upsetting the tin dipper and the soap dish and the flesh brush, and banged against the tin side of the bath. As he held, he closed his jaws tighter and tighter, for he made sure he would be banged to death. And for the honor of his family, he preferred to be found with his teeth locked. He was dizzy, aching, and felt shaken to pieces when something went off like a thunderclap just behind him. A hot wind knocked him senseless, and red fire singed his fur. The big man had been wakened by the noise, and had fired both barrels of a shotgun into Nog, just behind the hood. Rikki-Tikki held on with his eyes shut, for now he was quite sure he was dead. But the head did not move, and the big man picked him up and said, "It's the mongoose again, Alice. The little chap has saved our lives now." And then Teddy's mother came in with a very white face and saw what was left of Nog. And Rikki-Tikki dragged himself to Teddy's bedroom and spent half the rest of the night shaking himself tenderly to find out if he really was broken into 40 pieces as he fancied. When morning came, he was very stiff, but well pleased with his doing. Now I have Naganya to settle with, and she will be worse than 5 Nogs, and there's no knowing when the egg she spoke of will hatch. Goodness, I must go and see Dursey, he said. Without waiting for breakfast, he ran to the thorn bush, where Dursey was singing a song of triumph at the top of his voice. The news of Nog's death was all over the garden, for the sweeper had thrown the body on the rubbish heap. "Oh, you stupid tuft of feathers," said Rikki-Tikki angrily. "Is this the time to sing?" "Nog is dead, is dead, is dead," sang Dursey. The valiant Rikki-Tikki caught him by the head and held fast. The big man brought the bang stick, and Nog fell in 2 pieces. "He will never eat my babies again." "All that is true enough. But where's Naganya?" said Rikki-Tikki, looking carefully around him. Naganya came to the bathroom sluice and called for Nog. Dursey went on, and Nog came out on the end of a stick. The sweeper picked him up on the end of a stick and threw him upon the rubbish heap. "Let us sing to the great, the red-eyed Rikki-Tikki." And Dursey filled his throat and sang. "If I could get up to your nest, I'd roll your babies out," said Rikki-Tikki. "You don't know when to do the right thing at the right time. You're safe enough in your nest there, but it's war for me down here. Stop singing a minute, Dursey." "For the great, the beautiful Rikki-Tikki's sake, I will stop," said Dursey. "What is it? Oh, killer of the terrible Nog. Where's Naganya?" For the 3rd time. "On the rubbish heap, by the stables, mourning for Nog. Great is Rikki-Tikki with the white teeth." "Bother my white teeth. Have you ever heard where she keeps her eggs?" "In the melon bed, on the end, nearest the wall, where the sun strikes nearly all day. She hid them there weeks ago." "And you never thought it worthwhile to tell me?" "The end, nearest the wall, you said." "Rikki-Tikki, you are not going to eat her eggs." "Not eat, exactly, no. Dursey, if you have a grain of sense, you will fly off to the stables and pretend that your wing is broken, and let Naganya chase you away to this bush. I must get to the melon bed, and if I went there now, she'd see me." Dursey was a feather-brained little fellow who could never hold more than one idea at a time in his head. And just because he knew that Naganya's children were born in eggs, like his own, he didn't think at first that it was fair to kill them. But his wife was a sensible bird, so she flew off from the nest and left Dursey to keep the babies warm and continue his song about the death of Nog. Dursey was very like a man in some ways. She fluttered in front of Naganya by the rubbish heap and cried out, "Oh, my wing is broken! The boy in the house threw a stone at me and broke it." Then she fluttered more desperately than ever. Naganya lifted up her head and hissed. "You warned Rikki-Tikki when I would have killed him. Indeed, and truly, you have chosen a bad place to be lame in." And she moved toward Dursey's wife, slipping along over the dust. "The boy broke it with a stone," shrieked Dursey's wife. "Well, it may be some consolation to you when you're dead, to know that I shall settle accounts with the boy. My husband lies on the rubbish heap this morning, but by night the boy in the house will lie very still. What's the use of running away? I am sure to catch you. Little fool, look at me." Dursey's wife knew better than to do that, for a bird who looks at a snake's eyes gets so frightened she cannot move. Dursey's wife fluttered on, piping sorrowfully and never leaving the ground, and Naganya quickened her pace. Rikki-Tikki heard them going up the path from the stables, and he raced for the end of the melon patch near the wall. There, in the warm litter, above the melons, very cunningly hidden, he found 25 eggs, about the size of a bantam's eggs, but with whitish skin instead of shell. "I was not a day too soon," he said, for he could see the baby cobras curled up inside the skin, and he knew that the minute they were hatched, they could each kill a man or a mongoose. He bit off the tops of the eggs as fast as he could, taking care to crush the young cobras, and turned over the litter from time to time to see whether he had missed any. At last, there were only 3 eggs left, and Rikki-Tikki began to chuckle to himself when he heard Dursey's wife screaming, Rikki-Tikki, I led Naganya to the house, and she has gone into the veranda. And oh, come quickly, she means killing. Rikki-Tikki smashed 2 eggs and tumbled backward down the melon bed with the 3rd egg in his mouth and scuttled to the veranda as fast as he could put foot to the ground. Teddy and Teddy's mother. Teddy's mother and father were at early breakfast, but Rikki-Tikki saw that they weren't eating anything. They sat stone still, and their faces were white. Naganya was coiled up on the matting by Teddy's chair, within striking distance of Teddy's bare leg, and she was swaying to and fro, singing a song of triumph. Son of the big man that killed Nog. Stay still. Wait a little. I am not ready yet. Keep very still, all you 3. If you move, I strike, and if you do not move, I strike. Oh, foolish people who killed my Nog. Teddy's eyes were fixed on his father, and all his father could do was to whisper, Sit still, Teddy. You mustn't move. Teddy, keep still. Then Rikki-Tikki came up and cried, Turn round, Naganya, turn and fight. All in good time, said she, without moving her eyes. I will settle my account with you presently. Look at your friends, Rikki-Tikki. They are still and white. They are afraid. They dare not move. And if you come a step nearer, I strike. Look at your eggs, said Rikki-Tikki. Down by the melon bed. Down by the melon bed.
Near the wall.
Near the... Look at your eggs, Rikki-Tikki. Down by the melon... In the melon bed by the wall. Give me the next word.
Go and look, Naganya.
Go and look, Naganya. Shit. Go and look, Naganya.
The big snake turned half around.
Yeah, okay, I got it. That's enough. The big snake turned half around and saw the egg on the veranda. Give it to me, she said. Rikki-Tikki put his paws, one on each side of the egg, and his eyes were blood red. What price for a snake's egg? For a young cobra. For a young king cobra, for the very last of the brood. The ants are eating all the others down by the melon bed. Naganya spun clear round, forgetting everything for the sake of the one egg. Rikki-Tikki saw Teddy's father shoot out a big hand, catch Teddy by the shoulder, and drag him across the little table with the teacups, safe and out of reach of Naganya. Tricked, chuckled Rikki-Tikki. Now the boy is safe, and it was I that caught Nog by the hood last night in the bathroom. Then he began to jump up and down, all 4 feet together, his head close to the floor. He threw me to and fro, but he could not shake me off. He was dead before the big man blew him in 2. I did it. Rik-tick-ticky-ticky-chick. Come then, Naganya, come and fight with me. You shall not be a widow long. Naganya saw that she had lost her chance of killing Teddy, and the egg lay between his paws. Give me the egg, Rikki-Tikki. Give me the last of my eggs, and I will go away and never come back, she said, lowering her hood. Yes, you will go away, and you will never come back, for you will go to the rubbish heap with Nog. Fight, widow. The big man has gone for his gun. Fight! Rikki-Tikki was bounding all round Naganya, keeping just out of reach of her stroke, his little eyes like hot coals. Naganya gathered herself together and flung out at him. Rikki-Tikki jumped up and backward. Again and again and again she struck, and each time her head came with a whack on the matting of the veranda, and she gathered herself together like a watch spring. Then Rikki-Tikki danced in a circle to get behind her. Naganya spun round to keep her head to his head, so that the rustle of her tail on the matting sounded like dry leaves blown along by the wind. He had forgotten the egg. It still lay on the veranda, and as Naganya came nearer to it,
So at last, while Rikki-Tikki was drawing breath, she caught it in
he had forgotten the eggs. It still lay on the veranda, and Naganya came nearer and nearer to it, till at last, while Rikki-Tikki was drawing breath, she caught it in her mouth, turned to the veranda steps, and flew like an arrow down the path with Rikki-Tikki behind her. When a cobra runs for her life, she goes like a whiplash flicked across a horse's neck. Rikki-Tikki knew that he must catch her, or all the trouble would begin again. She headed straight for the tall grass by the thorn bush, and as he was running, Rikki-Tikki heard Durzy still singing his foolish little song of triumph. But Durzy's wife was wiser. She flew up her nest as Naganya came by, and flapped her wings about Naganya's head. If Durzy had helped, they might have turned her, but Naganya only lowered her hood and went on. Still, the instant's delay brought Rikki-Tikki up to her, and as she plunged into the rat hole where she and Nog used to live, his little white teeth were clenched on her tail, and he went down with her, and very few mongooses, however wise and old they may be, care to follow a cobra into its hole. It was dark in the hole, and Rikki-Tikki never knew when it might open out and give Naganya room to turn and strike at him. He held on savagely, and struck at his feet to act as brakes on the dark slope of the hot, moist earth. Then the grass by the mouth of the hole stopped waving, and Durzy said, "It is all over with Rikki-Tikki. We must sing his death song. Valiant Rikki-Tikki is dead, for Naganya will surely kill him underground." So he sang a very mournful song that he made up on the spur of the minute, and just as he got to the most touching part, the grass quivered again, and Rikki-Tikki, covered with dirt, dragged himself out of the hole, leg by leg, licking his whiskers. Durzy stopped with a little shout. Rikki-Tikki shook some of the dust out of his fur and sneezed. "It is all over," he said. "The widow will never come out again." And the red ants that lived between the grass stems heard him and began to troop down, one after another, to see whether he had spoken the truth. Rikki-Tikki curled himself up and slept where he was. Curled himself up in the grass and slept where he was. Slept and slept till it was late in the afternoon, for he had done a hard day's work. When he woke...
Now, he said, when he awoke.
All right. Now, yes. Slept and slept till it was late in the afternoon, for he had done a hard day's work. Now, he said, when he awoke, "I will go to the house. I will go back to the house. Tell the coppersmith, Durzy, and he will tell the garden that Naganya is dead. The coppersmith is a bird who makes a noise exactly like the beating of a little hammer on a copper pot. And the reason he is always making it is because he is the town crier to every Indian garden, and tells all the news to everybody who cares to listen." That set all the birds in the garden singing, and the frogs croaking, for Nog and Naganya used to eat frogs as well as little birds. When Rikki got to the house, Teddy and Teddy's mother, she looked very white still, for she had been fainting, and Teddy's father came out and almost cried over him. And that night he ate all that was given him till he could eat no more, and went to bed on Teddy's shoulder, where Teddy's mother saw him when she came to look late at night. He saved our lives. And Teddy's life. And what would I be without? Where would I be without? He saved our lives and Teddy's life, she said to her husband. Just think, he saved all our lives. Rikki-Tikki woke up with a jump, for the mongooses are light sleepers. "Oh, it's you," said he. "What are you bothering for? All the cobras are dead, and if they weren't, I'm here." Rikki-Tikki had a right to be proud of himself, but he did not grow too proud, and he kept that garden as a mongoose should keep it, with tooth and jump and spring and bite, till never a cobra dared show its head inside the walls. Thank you. It's very easy to get confused, but I don't have time to tell you. It's because of the writing that it was done 125 years ago. And because of the alliteration and rhymes and the just subtle way they'll change something. Thank you, Dan.
Good job. Thank you.